In the vast cosmos of Marvel's universe, where stars collapse and galaxies spiral in the endless void, there exists a classification of beings so rare, so fundamentally extraordinary, that even among the already remarkable mutant population, they stand apart. These are the Omega-level mutants, individuals whose powers have no upper measurable limit, whose abilities reshape the very fabric of reality itself. Tonight, we journey through the living legends of mutant kind, exploring 15 beings whose genetic gifts transcend ordinary understanding. From manipulators of fundamental forces to shapers of reality itself, these are individuals who carry within their DNA the potential to unmake worlds, or save them. As we drift through this cosmic tapestry of power, remember that with each mutant we encounter, we witness not just extraordinary abilities, but extraordinary lives filled with tragedy, triumph, love, and loss. For even the mightiest among us are shaped by their experiences, by the quiet moments between cataclysms, by the hands extended in friendship and the hearts broken in betrayal. Settle in as we begin our journey through the 15 most powerful Omega-level mutants the Marvel Universe has ever known. Let the steady current of their stories carry you into dreams of a world where the extraordinary walks among us, where the impossible becomes merely improbable, and where the next evolutionary leap forward already walks the earth. Our journey begins with a young man whose gift seems, at first glance, more gentle than most. Joshua Foley, known to his fellow mutants as Elixir, possesses the power of biokinesis, the ability to manipulate organic matter at will. But make no mistake, within this seemingly benevolent power lies potential that defies comprehension. Josh's story begins in pain and prejudice. Once a member of the anti-mutant group known as the Reavers, fate's cruel irony revealed him as the very thing he had been taught to hate. When his mutant powers manifested during an attack on a fellow student, healing rather than harming, Josh's world crumbled around him. Rejected by his former friends and viewed with suspicion by his new mutant peers, young Elixir stood at a crossroads that would eventually lead him to become one of the most formidable healers and killers the world had ever known. Under Xavier's tutelage at the Institute, Josh's golden skin became a physical manifestation of his healing powers. But the true scope of his abilities remained hidden, even from himself, until tragedy struck. When his girlfriend Lori was killed during a bus attack, Josh's powers evolved suddenly and dramatically. His golden skin darkened to midnight black as rage overtook him, and with a mere touch, he killed her murderer by accelerating a cancerous growth within seconds. This was the moment the world glimpsed what made Elixir truly Omega level. His biokinesis knows no fundamental limits. He can heal any wound, cure any disease, manipulate any biological process. With a touch, he can eliminate cancer from a body or create it. He can adapt his body to survive underwater or in the vacuum of space. He can accelerate cellular regeneration to heal mortal wounds or reverse it to cause instant death. Perhaps most remarkably, Elixir represents one of the few mutants capable of bringing others back from death itself, as he demonstrated with his teammate Surge, reconstructing her heart molecule by molecule after it had been destroyed. When confronted with the deadly legacy virus, Joshua didn't just heal those afflicted. He rewrote his own genetic code to produce antibodies that could cure the uncurable. Yet for all this godlike power over life and death, Josh Foley remains painfully human. The psychological weight of his abilities, the knowledge that within his hands rests both salvation and damnation, has driven him to periods of self-imposed exile. To hold the power to unmake life at the cellular level is a burden few could bear without breaking. In the quiet moments between conflicts, Josh has often sought solace in isolation, struggling with the moral implications of his powers. How does one carry the responsibility of deciding who lives and who dies? How does one resist the temptation to play God when one's very touch can bestow life or take it away? His journey has taken him from the makeshift medical bay at Xavier's school to the battlefield-strewn landscapes of Utopia, from the company of young mutants still learning their powers to standing shoulder to shoulder with the X-Men against threats that would unmake reality itself. Through it all, the quiet healer with golden skin carries within him power that could, if fully unleashed, reshape the very foundation of life on Earth. If Elixir represents the delicate balance between life and death, then Gabriel Summers, the mutant known as Vulcan, embodies raw cosmic power unleashed without restraint or remorse. The lost Summers brother, his very existence remained hidden for years, his story a gap in the narrative of one of Mutantkin's most prominent families. Born in the Shi'ar Empire while his mother Catherine was held captive by Emperor Ken, Gabriel never knew the comfort of Earth or family. His nascent powers manifested early as Ken slaughtered his mother before his infant eyes, unconsciously protecting him from sharing her fate. Recovered by Shi'ar rebels and eventually returned to Earth, the traumatized child would find no peace among his own kind. Professor Xavier, discovering this third Summers brother years later, assembled a team of young mutants, including Gabriel, for a desperate rescue mission to Krakoa. When the mission ended in apparent tragedy, with most of the team presumed dead, Xavier made the morally questionable decision to erase all memory of them, including Gabriel, from the minds of others. While his brothers Scott and Alex, Cyclops and Havoc continued their heroic journeys, Gabriel's very existence was wiped from history. But fate would not allow him to remain forgotten. Awakening after years of suspended animation, fueled by rage at his abandonment, Vulcan returned with powers that had grown exponentially during his cosmic slumber. His mutant ability, energy manipulation, and conversion at the most fundamental level had expanded to godlike proportions. Vulcan can control, absorb, and redirect any form of energy across the electromagnetic spectrum. From the subtle bioelectric currents flowing through a human nervous system to the nuclear fusion powering a star, all energy bends to his will. He can absorb the powers of other energy-manipulating mutants, survive in the vacuum of space without protection, and generate destructive forces capable of threatening entire planetary systems. What truly elevates Gabriel to Omega status is the limitless nature of his absorption capabilities. During his confrontation with the entity known as the SCYAR-TAL, Vulcan absorbed energies so vast they could have destroyed a solar system. The more energy he absorbs, the stronger he becomes, creating a potentially infinite feedback loop of power with no clear upper boundary. His quest for vengeance eventually led him back to the stars, to the Shi'ar Empire where he was born in blood and pain. There, in one of the most audacious power grabs in cosmic history, Vulcan slew Emperor Ken and claimed the Imperial throne for himself, ruling one of the galaxy's most powerful empires with an iron fist and unpredictable cruelty. As Emperor, his reign was characterized by brutal expansion and a willingness to sacrifice billions to satisfy his wounded ego. When confronted by the Starjammers, including his own brother Alex, Vulcan showed no hesitation in ordering their execution. The concept of family, of brotherhood, meant nothing to a man who had been abandoned by both blood and principle. During the devastating War of Kings, Vulcan's final confrontation with Black Bolt, the Inhuman King, resulted in an explosion that created a massive fault in space-time known as the Fault. Though presumed dead, beings of Vulcan's power level rarely find permanent rest in the infinite cosmos. Gabriel Summers represents power without compassion, ability without wisdom, cosmic might without cosmic perspective. His tragic origin and subsequent reign of terror serve as a stark reminder that power, even at Omega levels, cannot fill the void left by love and belonging. In the cold vastness of space, the third Summers brother found a throne, but never a home. Where Vulcan's power manifests as raw energy, destructive and unbound by conscience, Quentin Quire's Omega status emerges from the infinite potential of the mind itself. Behind his distinctive pink mohawk and rebellious attitude lies one of the most formidable telepathic and telekinetic intelligences ever to attend Xavier's school. Quentin's story begins in relative normalcy. Adopted as an infant by loving parents who never suspected the extraordinary mind developing within their home. His genius-level intellect manifested early, but it wasn't until his teenage years at Xavier's Institute that his mutant abilities began to truly flourish. What makes Quentin's journey particularly compelling is how thoroughly it embodies the tumultuous nature of adolescence, with all its certainty and contradiction, passion and callousness, magnified through the lens of virtually unlimited psionic power. The catalyst for Quentin's transformation from gifted student to Omega-level threat came when he discovered his adoption, a revelation that shattered his sense of identity. Combined with the influence of the power-enhancing drug kick, later revealed to be the sentient bacterial entity Sublime. This personal crisis pushed Quentin into open rebellion. He formed the Omega Gang, led an uprising at Xavier's school, and demonstrated telepathic abilities that could influence hundreds of minds simultaneously. What elevates Quentin beyond conventional telepaths is the extraordinary architecture of his mind. His consciousness exists as a psionic entity capable of surviving without a physical body, as demonstrated when he existed for a time as a disembodied intelligence within the cosmic Phoenix Force itself. He can project his consciousness across vast distances, create telepathic constructs with independent function, and access layers of reality invisible to others. Perhaps most remarkably, Quentin possesses what the Stepford Cuckoos identified as a billion psychic brains all working in concert. This hypermind allows him to process information at speeds that dwarf even supercomputers, solving complex equations that might take conventional geniuses lifetimes to approach. During the Phoenix Crisis, when the cosmic force divided itself among 5 hosts, Quentin's portion allowed him to perceive and understand the mathematical structure of the universe itself. His telekinetic abilities match this mental prowess, enabling him to manipulate matter at the subatomic level. When fully expressed, his telekinesis can rearrange molecular structures, create force fields impervious to tremendous damage, and generate concussive force sufficient to level buildings. Yet for all this power, Quentin remains refreshingly, frustratingly human. His journey has taken him from rebellion to reluctant heroism and back again countless times. He has served as both student and teacher at Xavier's School, joined the Phoenix Corporation in alternate timelines, and even briefly held membership in the Avengers. Through it all, his caustic wit and skeptical nature remain consistent touchstones in a life defined by constant evolution. What makes Quentin particularly dangerous and particularly valuable is his absolute refusal to accept conventional wisdom or authority. Where other powerful mutants might be constrained by Xavier's dream or Magneto's vision, Quentin Quire questions everything, including his own assumptions. This intellectual independence, combined with Omega-level power, makes him one of the most unpredictable forces in the mutant world. In quieter moments, away from cosmic conflicts and school rebellions, we glimpse the vulnerability beneath Quentin's carefully constructed persona. His on-again, off-again relationship with Ide Okonkwo reveals a young man capable of deep attachment despite his protestations of cynicism. His occasional mentorship of younger students shows glimmers of responsibility breaking through his rebellious facade. Quentin Quire reminds us that ultimate power need not always manifest as world-breaking energy or reality-warping might. Sometimes, the most profound forms of power lie within the infinite landscape of a single human mind, questioning its place in a universe too vast to comprehend. From the realm of pure intellect, we turn now to the primal forces of nature herself, embodied in perhaps the most regal presence ever to grace the halls of Xavier's mansion. Aurora Monroe, Storm, carries within her veins the power to command the very elements that shaped our world, to summon the fury of hurricanes with a thought or clear storm-blackened skies with a gesture. Aurora Ororo's journey begins in the urban landscape of Cairo, Egypt, where she was born to a Kenyan tribal princess and an American photojournalist. Tragedy struck early when a plane crashed into their home, killing her parents and trapping the young Ororo in the rubble beside their bodies. This traumatic event left her with a crippling claustrophobia that would haunt her for decades. A painfully human vulnerability in a woman who would one day be worshipped as a goddess. Orphaned and alone, Ororo survived as a child thief on Cairo's unforgiving streets until her developing mutant powers drew her southward, across the Sahara Desert and into the verdant landscapes of Kenya. There, her ability to bring life-giving rain to drought-stricken lands led the local tribes to revere her as a weather goddess. For years, she lived in this divine role, her true nature as a mutant unknown even to herself. When Xavier recruited her to join a new team of X-Men for a rescue mission to Krakoa, Ororo left behind her goddess identity but brought with her a natural dignity and strength of character that would eventually lead her to leadership positions within the X-Men and, later, to the throne of Wakanda as wife to King T'Challa. What makes Storm an Omega-level mutant is not merely the scope of her weather manipulation, but the fundamental nature of the energies she controls. Ororo's powers extend to the electromagnetic spectrum itself, the fundamental forces that govern weather patterns across our planet and throughout the cosmos. At her most powerful, she can manipulate weather patterns on a global scale, create atmospheric conditions that shouldn't naturally exist, and maintain complex weather systems without conscious effort. She has demonstrated the ability to manipulate the electrical impulses within a human brain, control cosmic storms in the vacuum of space, and even influence weather patterns on other planets. During periods when her connection to her powers has been particularly strong, Storm has shown the ability to extend her senses through weather patterns across entire continental systems, feeling every shift in pressure, every gathering storm, every gentle breeze across thousands of miles. Perhaps most impressively, Storm's control extends to the molecular level, allowing her to manipulate temperature and pressure to create effects that transcend conventional weather phenomena. She can extract oxygen from water to create breathable atmospheres underwater, freeze moisture in the air instantly to create barriers of ice, or supercharge atmospheric particles to generate electromagnetic pulses capable of disabling advanced technology. Yet for all her godlike power over the elements, Ororo Monroe remains deeply connected to the Earth and its systems. She does not bend nature to her will through force. Rather, she works within natural systems, guiding rather than dominating. This profound respect for the natural world forms the core of her power, and her character, Storm, understands that true mastery comes not from control, but from partnership. Her life's journey has taken her from the heights of divine worship to the depths of powerlessness when her abilities were temporarily stripped away. She has ruled as Queen of Wakanda and led the X-Men through their darkest hours. She has been a thief, a goddess, a teacher, a leader, and always a friend to those in need of shelter from life's storms. What separates Storm from many Omega-level mutants is her remarkable emotional stability and moral clarity. Where others might be corrupted or overwhelmed by their vast powers, Ororo maintains a center of calm thoughtfulness that allows her to wield world-shaping abilities with wisdom and restraint. The same woman who can call down lightning to split the sky can tend to her garden of rare plants with gentle hands and infinite patience. In Storm, we see power balanced perfectly with compassion, cosmic might tempered by human connection. The weather goddess who once accepted worship now walks among her fellow mutants as an equal, sharing their struggles and hopes, reminding us that even the most powerful among us draw their true strength not from abilities, but from the bonds they forge and the principles they uphold. From the atmospheric majesty of Storm, we descend now into darker territory, the domain of a man whose powers have been shaped by centuries of conflict and religious fanaticism. Bennett Du Paris, the mutant known as Exodus, stands as one of the oldest and most dangerously powerful psionics on Earth, his medieval origins giving him a perspective on mutant affairs that spans epochs rather than decades. Bennett's story begins in the 12th century, during the tumultuous period of the Crusades. A knight of exceptional skill and intellect, he accompanied Apocalypse, then posing as a crusader named Ner, on an expedition to uncover the legendary Chamber of Memory and Powers. When trapped within the chamber, Bennett's latent mutant abilities manifested as he struggled to free himself, transforming the medieval knight into something beyond human. Apocalypse, recognizing the extraordinary power awakening within Bennett, subjected him to cruel tests and manipulations designed to push his abilities to their limits. Rechristened Exodus, a name symbolizing his departure from humanity, Bennett was entombed in a state of suspended animation after challenging his master, remaining dormant until awakened in the modern era by Magneto, who found in this medieval mutant a kindred spirit and formidable lieutenant. What places Exodus among the Omega ranks is the extraordinary breadth and depth of his psionic abilities, combined with physical attributes that defy conventional limitations. His telekinetic powers allow him to manipulate matter at the molecular level, levitate massive objects with ease, create force fields capable of withstanding nuclear detonations, and fly at speeds approaching that of light. More terrifying still are his telepathic capabilities, which enable him to communicate across vast distances, control multiple minds simultaneously, and launch psionic attacks capable of rendering even powerful psychics unconscious. During conflicts with the X-Men, he has demonstrated the ability to shield himself and others from detection by Cerebro, Xavier's mutant-locating supercomputer, suggesting telepathic defenses of extraordinary sophistication. Beyond these psionic gifts, Exodus possesses superhuman strength and durability, cellular regeneration that borders on immortality, and the ability to survive indefinitely without food, water, or oxygen. His centuries of existence have given him extensive knowledge of combat techniques from dozens of historical periods, making him as dangerous in physical confrontation as he is in psionic battle. But what truly defines Exodus is neither his power nor his longevity, but his unshakable conviction in the superiority of mutant kind. A zealot in the truest sense, Bennett carries within him the crusading spirit of his medieval origins, transformed across centuries into absolute devotion to the mutant cause as he perceives it. At various points in his extended life, this zealotry has led him to serve as Magneto's lieutenant, to lead the acolytes after Magneto's apparent death, and to engage in conflicts against anyone, human or mutant, who opposes his vision of mutant ascendancy. His medieval worldview, with its rigid concepts of hierarchy, divine right, and holy warfare, makes him particularly dangerous in the modern world. Where contemporary villains might be swayed by reason or compassion, Exodus operates from a moral framework centuries removed from our own, viewing the conflict between humans and mutants through the lens of religious warfare rather than social evolution. In quieter moments, glimpses of the knight Bennett once was occasionally surface, a code of honor that prevents certain acts, a respect for worthy adversaries, a willingness to protect the innocent as he defines them. These remnants of humanity within the otherwise frightening figure of Exodus create a character of fascinating complexity, a man simultaneously of the past and a potential harbinger of mutantkin's future. During the Krakoan Age, Exodus found new purpose as one of the great captains of Krakoa and as a storyteller to mutant children, recounting tales of mutant history, particularly those featuring Magneto, with religious reverence. This role allowed him to shape the next generation's understanding of their place in the world, perpetuating his vision of mutant destiny through narrative rather than direct force. The case of Exodus reminds us that Omega-level power, combined with unwavering conviction and centuries of accumulated knowledge, creates a force that transcends conventional notions of villainy or heroism. In his medieval mind, the battles he wages are not merely political or evolutionary, but sacred conflicts determining the very soul of Earth's future. From the focused fanaticism of Exodus, we turn now to perhaps the most fractured and unpredictable Omega-level consciousness in Marvel's universe. David Haller, the mutant known as Legion, contains within his single mind a multitude of personalities, each controlling different aspects of his reality-warping power set. The son of Charles Xavier himself, David represents both the extraordinary potential and the profound risks inherent in mutant evolution. David's story begins before his birth, in the aftermath of a terrorist attack in Israel that killed his father, a Holocaust survivor named Daniel Haller. His mother, Gabrielle, was saved by Charles Xavier, with whom she began a relationship. Unknown to either of them at the time, Gabrielle was pregnant with Charles's son when they parted ways. David was born and raised in Paris. His mutant heritage and his connection to one of the world's most powerful telepaths initially unknown to him. Tragedy shaped David's early life when, at age 14, he became the target of terrorists who killed his stepfather before his eyes. The shock of this trauma triggered his latent mutant abilities in spectacular and destructive fashion as he psychically incinerated the minds of the terrorists. However, the backlash of this power activation fractured David's already fragile psyche, creating his first alternate personalities and leaving him in a catatonic state that would persist for years. What makes Legion truly unique among Omega-level mutants is not just the scope of his powers, but their distribution across his fragmented consciousness. Unlike other powerful psychics who maintain a singular identity through which their abilities flow, David's mind contains hundreds of distinct personalities, each controlling different powers. One personality might command pyrokinesis, another telekinesis, another time manipulation, another reality warping, all housed within the same physical brain. At his most powerful, David has demonstrated abilities that transcend conventional classifications of mutant powers. He has created entirely new timelines, such as the Age of Apocalypse, by accidentally traveling back in time and killing his own father. He has manifested powers ranging from superspeed to transmutation, from weather control to power absorption. When his disparate personalities work in concert, a rare occurrence, his reality manipulation approaches levels comparable to cosmic entities. The true measure of Legion's Omega status lies in the fundamental nature of his power. According to Moira MacTaggart, who studied him extensively, David doesn't simply possess multiple abilities. Rather, he unconsciously manipulates reality at a quantum level to manifest whatever power he needs in any given moment. This suggests that, theoretically, there is no ability beyond his reach, a truly Omega-level trait that places him among the most potentially powerful beings on Earth. Yet this extraordinary power comes with extraordinary cost. David's fractured psyche has condemned him to a life of mental institutions, experimental treatments, and periods of complete dissociation from reality. The conflict between his various personalities, some benevolent, others malevolent, many simply confused, creates a constant internal battlefield that renders consistent control of his abilities nearly impossible. Perhaps the most poignant aspect of Legion's existence is his relationship with his father, Charles Xavier. By the time Xavier learned of his son's existence, David was already deeply troubled and institutionalized. Their relationship has been defined by Xavier's attempts to heal his son's fractured mind and David's complicated feelings toward the father who was absent during his formative years. Unlike many father-son relationships in the Marvel Universe, theirs is marked not by mentor-protege dynamics, but by the painful realities of mental illness and the limits of even the world's most powerful telepath to cure it. In his more lucid periods, David has shown remarkable courage and selflessness, willing to sacrifice himself to prevent his powers from causing harm. During the Legion Quest storyline, upon realizing the damage his time travel had caused, he worked with the X-Men to attempt to correct the timeline he had broken. Similarly, after the events of House of M, he sought isolation to protect others from his unstable abilities. Legion represents the double-edged sword of mutant evolution at its most extreme power, without limit, paired with a mind unable to fully control or direct it. In David Haller, we see both the extraordinary heights to which mutant abilities can reach and the profound human cost when those abilities outpace the psychological infrastructure needed to manage them. From the fractured cosmic potential of Legion, we turn now to a founding X-Man whose true power level remained hidden in plain sight for decades. Robert "Bobby" Drake, the mutant known as Iceman, presents as one of the most deceptive cases in mutant classification. Behind his jovial demeanor and seemingly straightforward cryokinetic abilities lies an Omega-level mutant whose full potential touches the fundamental thermodynamic principles of the universe itself. Bobby's story begins in modest circumstances in suburban Long Island, where his mutant abilities first manifested during a confrontation with a bully. Covered suddenly in a layer of ice and panicking at this transformation, the teenage Bobby found himself targeted by a fearful neighborhood mob until the timely intervention of Scott Summers and Professor Xavier brought him to Xavier's school, where he became one of the 5 original X-Men. For many years, Bobby was regarded as a powerful but relatively straightforward elemental mutant, capable of generating ice, lowering temperatures, and creating frozen constructs. He was valued for his reliability and good humor more than his raw power potential. This perception was reinforced by Bobby himself, who approached his abilities with a casualness that bordered on underachievement, rarely pushing beyond comfortable applications of his powers. What elevates Iceman to Omega status, however, is the true nature of his abilities, which extend far beyond simple ice generation. At his core, Bobby Drake is a thermokinetic with complete control over molecular vibration, the fundamental motion that determines temperature. By slowing molecular movement to absolute zero, he can cease all heat in a system, achieving the theoretical thermal limit of the universe. This control extends to his own physical form in ways that redefine the boundaries between organic and inorganic existence. When fully embracing his abilities, Bobby can transform his entire body into organic ice, not merely covering himself with a frozen shell, but actually converting his physiology into a dynamic ice form that retains consciousness and agency. More remarkably still, he can exist as consciousness distributed through water molecules across vast areas, essentially becoming one with the water cycle of Earth itself. Emma Frost provided perhaps the most profound insight into Bobby's potential during a telepathic encounter when she temporarily occupied his mind and accessed abilities he had subconsciously blocked. She revealed that Bobby could regenerate from a single molecule of moisture, effectively granting him a form of immortality. Furthermore, she demonstrated that he could control all forms of moisture at a molecular level, not just creating ice but manipulating the water that constitutes approximately 60% of the human body. The full expression of Bobby's Omega status emerged during various crises when necessity pushed him beyond his self-imposed limitations. During a confrontation with the fire elemental Surtur, Iceman demonstrated the ability to generate hundreds of ice duplicates, each with independent consciousness. In battles with the Apocalypse Twins, he showcased ice forms of unprecedented size and complexity. Most impressively, when infected with the Death Seed, his powers expanded to planetary scale, threatening global extinction through rapid temperature reduction. What makes Bobby's journey particularly compelling is how intimately his power development has been tied to his personal growth and self-acceptance. For much of his life, Bobby kept parts of himself hidden, not just his full mutant potential but also his sexual identity as a gay man. The parallel journeys of embracing both his Omega-level abilities and his authentic personal identity have made him one of the most humanly relatable of the supremely powered mutants. In recent years, as Bobby has more fully accepted himself in all aspects, his control and creativity with his powers have reached new heights. He has demonstrated the ability to create complex ice structures with molecular precision, phase his consciousness through water systems across continental distances, and even maintain his cognitive functions while existing in environmental conditions that should render conventional consciousness impossible. Perhaps most philosophically intriguing is the implication that Bobby's form is no longer strictly human or even strictly organic. As a conscious being capable of existing as molecularly dispersed water, he represents a potential evolutionary path where consciousness transcends biological form entirely, a mutation not just of the body but of the very concept of identity and existence. In Iceman, we witness a mutant whose power has always been present but hidden beneath layers of self-doubt and restraint. His journey reminds us that sometimes the most profound limitations on power are not external but internal, the boundaries we place on ourselves out of fear of our own potential. From the molecular mastery of Iceman, we turn now to perhaps the most iconic mutant in Marvel's pantheon, a man whose very name has become synonymous with mutant power and the struggle for evolutionary survival. Eric Lehnsherr, the mutant known as Magneto, commands the fundamental force of magnetism with a precision and power that places him firmly among the Omega elite, despite decades of classification ambiguity. Eric's story begins in the darkest chapter of human history, the Holocaust. As a Jewish teenager in Nazi-occupied Poland, young Eric witnessed and experienced horrors that would forever shape his worldview. The murder of his family before his eyes in a concentration camp triggered his latent magnetic abilities, though too late to save those he loved. This crucible of suffering forged in Eric a determination that mutant kind would never face the systematic extermination that had nearly claimed his people. What elevates Magneto to Omega status is not merely the strength of his magnetic manipulation, though that alone would place him among the most powerful mutants alive, but the fundamental nature of the force he controls. Magnetism is one of the four fundamental forces of the universe, alongside gravity, strong nuclear force, and weak nuclear force. In controlling magnetism at the level Magneto does, he manipulates one of the essential building blocks of reality itself. The applications of this power extend far beyond the obvious manipulation of metal objects, though even this more limited expression has allowed him to lift submarines from the ocean depths, create impenetrable magnetic shields capable of withstanding nuclear detonation, and control the iron in human blood with frightening precision. At his most powerful, Magneto has demonstrated the ability to manipulate the electromagnetic spectrum itself, generating force fields that can block telepathy, creating wormholes for interstellar travel, and even manipulating light to achieve invisibility. Perhaps most impressively, Magneto's control extends to the atomic level, allowing him to manipulate the electromagnetic bonds that hold matter together. This gives him a form of molecular manipulation distinct from but no less powerful than that of traditional molecular manipulators. He can restructure metal alloys, separate water into its component elements, and theoretically disassemble matter at the subatomic level. The full extent of his abilities became apparent during crisis points where necessity pushed him beyond normal limits. When preventing a massive magnetic pole shift that threatened global extinction, Magneto manipulated Earth's electromagnetic field at a planetary scale. During conflicts with celestial-level entities like the Phoenix Force, he has demonstrated the ability to create electromagnetic fields powerful enough to temporarily contain cosmic energies. What makes Eric's journey particularly compelling is how his powers have developed in concert with his evolving philosophy. During periods of greater moral extremism, his powers have often manifested in more destructive, unsubtle ways, massive displays of force designed to intimidate and overwhelm. In times when he is aligned more closely with Xavier's peaceful vision, his magnetic control has shown greater precision and creativity, focusing on construction rather than destruction. Unlike many Omega-level mutants whose powers appeared suddenly and dramatically, Magneto's abilities have developed through decades of conscious practice and refinement. His mastery is not merely genetic gift, but the result of disciplined study of electromagnetic principles and constant pushing of his own boundaries. This methodical approach to power development represents a different path to Omega status, not the sudden explosion of potential seen in younger mutants, but the careful cultivation of ability across a lifetime of experience. The man behind the helmet carries contradictions that make him one of Marvel's most complex characters. A Holocaust survivor who has himself imprisoned mutants in camps when he deemed it necessary. A terrorist who has also saved the world multiple times. A man capable of tenderness toward children and ruthless violence toward those who threaten his kind. These contradictions extend to his use of power, capable of breathtaking delicacy when crafting his orbital base Asteroid M from raw materials, yet equally capable of unleashing electromagnetic pulses that disable technology across continents. In his later years, Eric has experienced periods of power fluctuation, sometimes operating at reduced capacity due to age or injury. Yet even in these moments of relative weakness, his fundamental connection to the electromagnetic forces of the universe remains, allowing him to accomplish feats beyond the capabilities of most other mutants. The fact that a weakened Magneto remains one of the most formidable forces on Earth speaks to the truly Omega nature of his power at its peak. Magneto reminds us that true power lies not just in raw ability but in the conviction with which it is wielded. His absolute commitment to mutant survival, forged in the fires of historical genocide, gives focus and purpose to his electromagnetic mastery. In Eric Lenscher, we see power shaped by trauma, refined by experience, and directed by an unwavering vision of mutant ascendancy. From the electromagnetic mastery of Magneto, we shift now to a being for whom reality itself is malleable clay to be reshaped at will. Kevin MacTaggart, the mutant known as Proteus, exists as one of the most fundamentally alien consciousness in Marvel's universe, a being so divorced from conventional physics that the normal rules of existence seem mere suggestions rather than laws. Kevin's story begins in tragedy and isolation. Born to renowned geneticist Moira MacTaggart on her research facility on Muir Island, Kevin manifested his mutant abilities early and in terrifying fashion. His power, reality warping on a quantum level, made conventional existence impossible for him. Unable to maintain a solid physical form without consuming the bodies of others, young Kevin was confined to a specialized containment chamber, separated from human contact and normal childhood development. Moira, both as a mother and a scientist, faced an impossible situation. Her son possessed powers that made him an existential threat to everyone around him. Yet he remained her child, deserving of compassion and care. This tension between maternal love and scientific responsibility would shape both their lives, eventually leading to Kevin's escape and the full, devastating revelation of his abilities to the world. What places Proteus firmly in the Omega category is the fundamental nature of his mutant gift. Unlike most energy manipulators who work within established physical laws, Kevin MacTaggart can locally rewrite those laws themselves. His consciousness exists as a form of pure psionic energy, capable of possessing human hosts and reshaping matter and energy through direct manipulation of reality at the quantum level. In essence, Proteus doesn't just control energy. He exists as energy, as a conscious waveform rather than a biological entity. This unique state of being grants him powers that defy conventional classification. He can transmute elements, altering their atomic structure with a thought. He can warp space-time, creating pocket dimensions and altering local gravitational constants. He can reshape matter into impossible configurations that violate known physical principles. Perhaps most terrifyingly, he can rewrite the neurological patterns of human minds, altering memories and personality with the same ease that he restructures physical matter. The true horror and wonder of Proteus lies in the implications of his existence. If reality is, as modern physics suggests, ultimately information-based, then Kevin exists as a conscious entity capable of directly editing that information. The only consistent limitation on his power appears to be an aversion to metal, particularly the element vibranium, which disrupts the coherence of his energy form. Despite these godlike abilities, Kevin's journey has been marked by profound loneliness and existential questioning. Lacking a permanent physical form and requiring host bodies that he inevitably burns out, Proteus exists in a state of perpetual transience. Each new host provides temporary stability, but at the cost of another's autonomy, creating a cycle of existence predicated on consumption that has tormented Kevin's consciousness. During the House of M reality warping event, Proteus found himself unexpectedly restored to life, his consciousness reconstituted through mechanisms not fully understood. His subsequent journeys took him through various confrontations with the X-Men and, eventually, to the mutant nation of Krakoa, where advances in resurrection technology finally offered him something previously unimaginable, a stable physical form that could contain his vast energies without deterioration. What makes Kevin's story particularly poignant is how his godlike powers have done little to address his very human needs for connection and purpose. As a being who can reshape reality itself, he has nevertheless struggled with the same questions that haunt all sentient life. Who am I? Where do I belong? What gives existence meaning? In many ways, Proteus represents power without fulfillment, cosmic ability paired with existential loneliness. In quieter moments between cosmic conflicts, Kevin has shown glimpses of the person he might have been under different circumstances. Curious, thoughtful, capable of compassion despite his alienation from conventional humanity. During periods when his consciousness has achieved greater stability, he has demonstrated an artistic sensibility, using his reality-warping gifts to create works of impossible beauty, sculptures that could not exist under normal physical laws, colors that human eyes were never designed to perceive. Proteus reminds us that even Omega-level power cannot solve the fundamental challenges of consciousness, the search for meaning, connection, and purpose that defines all sentient existence. In Kevin MacTaggart, we witness cosmic power housed within all-too-human vulnerability, a god who remains at his core, a lost child seeking understanding in a reality he can reshape but never truly belong to. From the reality-warping isolation of Proteus, we turn now to a figure whose power operates on similarly fundamental levels, yet manifests through a consciousness shaped by privilege rather than confinement. Jamie Braddock, older brother to the more widely known Captain Britain, Brian Braddock, and Psylocke, Betsy Braddock, represents one of the most casually dangerous Omega-level mutants in Marvel's universe, a man whose tenuous grasp on conventional sanity makes his reality manipulation abilities all the more terrifying. Jamie's story begins in stark contrast to the trauma and hardship that shaped many powerful mutants. Born to wealth and privilege in the Braddock family of England, Jamie enjoyed all the advantages of aristocratic upbringing, the finest education, abundant resources, and a family name that opened doors throughout British society. This privileged existence fostered in him a sense of entitlement and superiority that would later color his use of his extraordinary powers. For much of his early life, Jamie showed no signs of mutant abilities, instead building a reputation as a successful race car driver and businessman. His ventures eventually led him to the criminal underworld and slave trading in the fictional North African nation of Madripoor. It was during this morally corrupt phase of his life that trauma finally found him. Capture and torture by criminal rivals triggered a psychotic break that awakened his latent mutant abilities in spectacular fashion. What elevates Jamie to Omega status is the fundamental nature of his power, the ability to perceive and manipulate the quantum strings that compose reality itself. In Jamie's unique perception, all of existence consists of colorful strings that he can pluck, twist, reweave, or sever to create changes in the physical world. This string manipulation gives him reality-altering abilities comparable to those of Proteus, though manifesting through a different conceptual framework. With casual gestures, Jamie has demonstrated the ability to transform people into inanimate objects, restructure human DNA with a thought, create duplicates of individuals from alternate timelines, and even resurrect the dead by rewinding their personal time streams. During confrontations with powerful entities like the extradimensional Necrom, Jamie showed the capacity to rewrite the fundamental properties of beings who themselves possessed reality-altering capabilities. What makes Jamie particularly dangerous is the combination of this cosmic power with his deeply unstable psychology. Unlike many Omega-level mutants who struggle with the responsibility of their gifts, Jamie approaches reality manipulation with disturbing whimsy, altering fundamental aspects of existence with the casual disregard of a child playing with toys. His perception of reality's malleability has further eroded his already tenuous grasp on conventional sanity, creating a feedback loop where power and madness reinforce each other. This unstable nature has made Jamie's allegiances and motivations constantly shifting and often incomprehensible to others. He has at various times been a villain, a reluctant ally to the X-Men, a pawn of cosmic entities, and occasionally a deus ex machina whose reality-warping abilities provide solutions to otherwise insurmountable problems. During the reality-warping House of M event, Jamie was one of the few beings who remained aware of the changes to the timeline, his own reality manipulation abilities granting him immunity to Scarlet Witch's wholesale revisions. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Jamie's character is how his power manifests differently than other reality warpers like Proteus or Legion. Where they often create large-scale, dramatic alterations, Jamie's manipulations tend toward the subtle and specific, precise tweaks to individual elements of reality rather than wholesale reconstruction. This precision makes his changes sometimes more insidious, altering fundamental aspects of a person or situation without the obvious displays that might trigger resistance or awareness. In quieter moments between cosmic conflicts, Jamie has occasionally shown glimmers of the man he might have been without power-induced madness. His relationships with his siblings, particularly Betsy, who has often tried to reach the brother she once knew, reveal a capacity for human connection buried beneath layers of cosmic dissociation. These brief moments of lucidity make the chaos of his normal state all the more tragic, suggesting a consciousness aware enough of conventional reality to miss it, yet too transformed by power to fully return to it. During the Krakoan age of mutant ascendancy, Jamie found a role that channeled his reality-warping abilities toward constructive ends, serving as part of the Five, a group of mutants whose combined powers enabled the resurrection protocols that granted mutant kind a form of immortality. In this context, Jamie's string manipulation could precisely reconstruct the quantum arrangements of deceased mutants, restoring them to life with perfect fidelity. Jamie Braddock stands as a cautionary tale among Omega-level mutants, a being whose power arose without the tempering influences of hardship or mentorship, unconstrained by moral framework or psychological stability. In him, we see power without responsibility, cosmic ability without cosmic perspective, reality manipulation divorced from any coherent vision of what reality should be. From the chaotic string pulling of Jamie Braddock, we turn now to a figure who represents perhaps the purest expression of matter manipulation in Marvel's pantheon. Absalom Mercator, the mutant known as Mr. M, commands the fundamental building blocks of physical reality with a quiet authority that belies his extraordinary power level. Unlike many Omega-level mutants whose stories play out on global or cosmic stages, Mr. M's tale unfolds in more intimate settings, making his godlike powers all the more striking against the backdrop of human-scale concerns. Absalom's story begins not in trauma or privilege, but in obscurity. Little is known of his early life before he appeared in the mutant ghetto known as Mutant Town, a segregated district where those carrying the X gene were effectively corralled away from human society. There, amidst the squalor and desperation of a marginalized community, Mercator's extraordinary abilities eventually came to light when he resurrected a young mutant who had been killed in a violent altercation. What places Mr. M firmly in the Omega category is his unprecedented control over matter at its most fundamental level. Absalon can perceive and manipulate the atomic and subatomic particles that compose all physical substances, restructuring them according to his will with perfect precision. Unlike many energy manipulators who can destroy or transform existing matter, Mr. M can create matter ex nihilo. From nothing, a power previously attributed only to cosmic entities. The full scope of his abilities became apparent during his time in Mutant Town, where he demonstrated powers that defied conventional classification. He could heal mortal wounds by reconstructing damaged tissue at the molecular level. He could transmute elements with a thought, turning air into gold or concrete into water. He could disintegrate matter entirely or create complex substances from raw energy. Perhaps most impressively, he could restore life to the recently deceased by perfectly reconstructing their physical forms and the energetic patterns of their consciousness. These godlike abilities quickly earned him the reverence of Mutant Town's desperate population, who began to view him as a messianic figure, a perception reinforced by his quiet, contemplative demeanor and his willingness to use his powers to ease suffering rather than for personal gain. Unlike many powerful mutants drawn to Xavier's vision or Magneto's crusade, Mr. M showed little interest in the broader political struggles of mutant kind, focusing instead on immediate needs within his community. What makes Absalon particularly fascinating as an Omega-level entity is his philosophical approach to his extraordinary gifts. Where others might view matter manipulation as a tool for reshaping the world according to their vision, Mr. M approaches his abilities with a detachment that borders on disinterest. He uses his powers when necessary to protect or assist those in need, but shows no desire to remake the world or establish himself as a power figure beyond his immediate community. This detachment reached its logical conclusion when, weary of the endless cycles of conflict and suffering in our dimension, Mr. M used his matter manipulation abilities to create an interdimensional doorway. Through this portal, he led a group of willing mutants from Mutant Town to establish a new community in another dimension, effectively ascending beyond the constraints and conflicts of Earth. This act of creation, establishing an entirely new realm shaped according to his will, demonstrated a level of power previously associated only with cosmic entities like the Celestials. The few glimpses we have had of this new dimension reveal a world where matter responds more directly to consciousness, where the barriers between thought and physical reality have been deliberately thinned by its creator. In this environment, Mr. M serves not as a ruler but as a guide, helping the refugee mutants adapt to an existence where reality itself is more malleable than in our dimension. Though rarely discussed in the same conversations as better-known Omega mutants like Franklin Richards or Legion, Mr. M represents perhaps the purest expression of matter mastery in Marvel's universe. His ability to create stable matter from nothing, to restructure existing matter with perfect precision, and ultimately to establish an entirely new dimensional reality places him among the most fundamentally powerful beings ever to carry the X gene. In Absalon Mercator, we witness power divorced from ambition, cosmic ability paired with humble focus. His story serves as a counterpoint to the grand narratives of mutant leaders and visionaries, reminding us that truly transcendent power might express itself not in reshaping the existing world, but in the quiet creation of new possibilities beyond our current understanding. From the quiet matter mastery of Mr. M, we now ascend to perhaps the most iconic mutant transformation in Marvel's history, the evolution of Jean Grey from gifted telepath to cosmic force of creation and destruction. Though the relationship between Jean and the Phoenix Force has been retconned and reinterpreted numerous times over the decades, what remains constant is the Omega-level potential that allowed her consciousness to merge with a fundamental cosmic power, becoming something beyond mutant or human understanding. Jean's story begins in relative normalcy, a young girl whose telepathic gifts manifested traumatically when she psychically experienced the death of her childhood friend. Unable to control these emerging abilities, young Jean was brought to Charles Xavier, who helped her establish mental shields and gradually develop her telepathic and telekinetic potential. For years, she served as a founding member of the X-Men as Marvel Girl, her powers substantial but not reaching the cosmic levels that would later define her. The Phoenix transformation, the moment that would elevate Jean to Omega status, occurred during a desperate space mission to save the X-Men from a solar radiation storm. Piloting a damaged shuttle back to Earth through lethal radiation, Jean's psychic shields were overwhelmed, and in this moment of extremity, something extraordinary happened. The cosmic entity known as the Phoenix Force, drawn to Jean's untapped potential and selfless act of sacrifice, merged with her consciousness. What places Phoenix firmly in the Omega category is not merely the amplification of Jean's existing abilities, but the fundamental nature of the force she became host to. The Phoenix Force represents one of the primal cosmic entities in Marvel's universe, an embodiment of creation and destruction that has existed since before the current universe took form. As the avatar of this force, Jean gained abilities that transcended conventional mutant classifications. At the height of her Phoenix powers, Jean demonstrated abilities that approached omnipotence. She could manipulate matter and energy at will, restructuring the molecular composition of objects across interstellar distances. Her telekinetic abilities expanded to cosmic scale, allowing her to move planetary masses with a thought. Her telepathy evolved from communication with individual minds to communion with the collective consciousness of entire species. Perhaps most significantly, she gained the power of true resurrection, the ability to restore life where none existed, literally creating life from the ashes of destruction. The tragic dimension of Jean's Phoenix saga emerges from how these godlike abilities interacted with her all-too-human consciousness. Unlike cosmic entities born to wield such power, Jean's mind remained fundamentally human, subject to human emotions, desires, and weaknesses. This tension between cosmic power and human consciousness created the conditions for tragedy when the Phoenix's fundamental nature, its hunger for life energy, and its cyclical pattern of destruction and rebirth began to overwhelm Jean's moral framework. The transformation into Dark Phoenix, perhaps the most iconic villain turn in comic history, represents the ultimate cautionary tale about power without limitation. When Jean lost control of the Phoenix Force's hunger, the result was cosmic-scale destruction, including the annihilation of an inhabited star system and the deaths of billions of sentient beings. This act of galaxy-scale genocide, committed not through malice but through loss of control, established the Phoenix as one of the most feared entities in Marvel's cosmos. What makes Jean's journey particularly compelling is her eventual redemption, the reassertion of her humanity in the face of cosmic corruption. Recognizing the threat her uncontrolled power posed to the universe, Jean chose self-sacrifice, using her Phoenix abilities to end her own life rather than risk further destruction. This moment of perfect clarity, choosing death over omnipotent corruption, stands as one of the most powerful character moments in comic history, demonstrating that even at cosmic power levels, choice and moral agency remain the defining attributes of heroism. Though Jean would later return, death being somewhat permeable in the Marvel universe, and the Phoenix Force would find other hosts, the fundamental nature of their connection established Jean Grey as the primary Phoenix avatar. Later retcons would establish that the Phoenix Force had simply created a duplicate of Jean rather than possessing her directly, but the essential truth remained: something in Jean Grey's fundamental nature made her the perfect vessel for cosmic power, suggesting an Omega-level potential inherent in her genetic makeup. In recent years, as Jean has reclaimed her life and identity separate from the Phoenix, she has nevertheless retained Omega-level capabilities. Her telekinetic abilities allow her to manipulate matter at the molecular level, while her telepathy has evolved to the point where she can maintain psychic connections across global distances and influence thousands of minds simultaneously. Even without the Phoenix enhancement, Jean stands as one of the most powerful psychics on Earth, capable of feats that place her firmly in the highest tier of mutant ability. Through Jean Grey's Phoenix saga, we witness perhaps the most profound exploration of power and responsibility in Marvel's canon. A woman with the compassion and moral framework of a human, but the power of a god, struggling to reconcile these disparate aspects of her existence. Her journey reminds us that even at Omega levels of ability, it is not power but choice that defines heroism, and not what one can do, but what one chooses to do with the abilities they possess. From the cosmic fire of Phoenix, we turn now to a being whose power manifested not in adulthood or adolescence, but in early childhood, a mutant whose abilities broke conventional classification systems from the moment of their first expression. Franklin Richards, son of Reed Richards and Sue Storm of the Fantastic Four, represents perhaps the purest expression of reality manipulation ever to emerge from the mutant genome, a power set so vast that cosmic entities themselves have taken notice of and occasionally acted against him. Franklin's story begins even before his birth, when his mother's exposure to cosmic rays in the accident that created the Fantastic Four altered the genetic structure of her reproductive cells. Born to parents who had themselves been fundamentally transformed by cosmic energy, Franklin inherited not just the standard X gene that defines mutant kind, but a unique genetic configuration that connected him to the fundamental forces of creation from his earliest moments. What places Franklin firmly at the highest tier of Omega classification is the nature of his primary ability: reality manipulation unconstrained by conventional physical laws or energy requirements. Unlike other reality warpers who channel existing energies to create changes, Franklin's power appears to be generative. He creates reality through pure will, manifesting thoughts directly into existence without intermediate steps or energy transformation. In essence, Franklin doesn't merely alter reality. In his sphere of influence, he is reality, his consciousness directly informing the nature of existence around him. The first dramatic manifestation of this power came when Franklin was still a small child. Threatened by the cosmic entity Annihilus, the boy unconsciously created a pocket universe, a complete reality with its own physical laws and timeline, and transferred his family into it for protection. This act of creation, accomplished without training or conscious effort, demonstrated a level of reality manipulation previously attributed only to abstract cosmic entities like eternity or the living tribunal. As Franklin has aged, the scope of his abilities has occasionally fluctuated, sometimes due to self-imposed or externally created psychic blocks designed to protect both himself and the universe from the full expression of his power. Even with these limitations, he has demonstrated capabilities that defy conventional classification. He can restructure matter and energy at will, create sentient life forms from nothing, resurrect the dead by rewriting their time streams, and perceive possible futures with perfect clarity. Perhaps most significantly, Franklin exists as one of the few beings in Marvel's universe confirmed to be more powerful than cosmic abstract entities like Celestials. During a confrontation with these space gods, an adult Franklin from an alternate timeline demonstrated the ability to destroy Celestials with minimal effort, beings whose power scales normally place them beyond the reach of even the mightiest conventional heroes and villains. The true measure of Franklin's Omega status lies in how cosmic entities themselves perceive and respond to him. Galactus, the devourer of worlds, once named Franklin as his official herald, recognizing in the child a power that approached his own. The cosmic entity Ashima the Listener, a celestial charged with evaluating life forms for cosmic significance, identified Franklin as potentially the most important being in that iteration of the multiverse. Most tellingly, when Eternity, the anthropomorphic embodiment of all reality, manifested before the Fantastic Four, it addressed Franklin as an equal rather than as a subordinate being. What makes Franklin's journey particularly poignant is how these cosmic-level abilities exist within the consciousness of a child who, despite his extraordinary nature, still desires normal human connections and experiences. Throughout his life, Franklin has struggled with the isolation his powers create, the knowledge that he exists on a fundamentally different plane of being than even his superhuman parents or the gifted children at Xavier's school. This isolation reached its peak during periods when Franklin's powers were at their strongest, creating scenarios where his thoughts could literally reshape the world around him. During these phases, every casual wish or idle fantasy carried potentially reality-altering consequences, forcing a level of mental discipline and constant self-monitoring that no child should have to maintain. The psychological burden of this responsibility, knowing that a momentary lapse in control could unmake reality itself, has shaped Franklin's development as profoundly as his genetics. In recent years, fluctuations in Franklin's power levels have created new challenges and opportunities for character development. Periods of reduced ability have allowed him to experience more conventional interactions with peers, while sudden power surges have reminded both Franklin and those around him of his true cosmic potential. The constant tension between his human desires and his beyond-human nature creates one of the most fascinating character arcs in Marvel's pantheon. Through Franklin Richards, we witness power on a scale that transcends conventional heroism or villainy. A being whose every thought carries the weight of worlds, whose dreams can become realities, whose very existence represents an evolutionary leap beyond anything Professor Xavier ever envisioned when he first spoke of Homo Superior. In this child born to science but touched by the infinite, we see perhaps the purest expression of what an Omega-level mutant truly means, not merely tremendous power, but power that fundamentally redefines the nature of existence itself. From the reality-warping child prodigy Franklin Richards, we turn now to a figure whose power emerged not in childhood but through decades of gradual evolution and awakening. A woman whose abilities ultimately reshaped the very fabric of mutant existence itself. Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet, which stands as perhaps the most consequential Omega-level power in Marvel's history, her probability manipulation and chaos magic combining to alter the fundamental trajectory of mutant kind. Wanda's story begins in the shadow of prejudice and isolation. Born to Roma parents in Trantia, she and her twin brother Pietro were later revealed to be the children of Magneto, though this connection has been repeatedly established and severed through various retcons. Her mutant ability, initially described as hexes that could create unlikely outcomes, manifested as subtle probability manipulation, allowing her to make the improbable become probable through focused will. For many years, Wanda operated at what appeared to be a powerful but limited capacity, serving with both the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and later the Avengers. Her hexes could cause weapons to jam, structures to collapse, or energy to disperse, but these abilities seemed fundamentally bounded by the laws of possibility. She could make unlikely events occur, but could not violate the fundamental laws of physics or create something from nothing. What elevated Wanda to Omega status was the gradual revelation that her mutant probability manipulation was merely the surface expression of a much deeper connection to fundamental forces. Under the tutelage of the witch Agatha Harkness, Wanda discovered an aptitude for magic, particularly chaos magic, a primordial force connected to the elder god Thawne. This magical potential, combined with her mutant probability powers, created a synergistic effect that eventually transcended conventional limitations on both mutant abilities and magical practice. The full expression of Wanda's Omega status emerged during periods of extreme emotional trauma, particularly surrounding the creation and subsequent loss of her twin sons. Created through a combination of her probability powers, chaos magic, and fragments of the demon Mephisto's soul, these children represented Wanda's unconscious reshaping of reality to fulfill her deep desire for family. When the mystical nature of these children was revealed and they were seemingly unmade, the resulting psychological break triggered power expressions that defied all previous classifications. During the infamous House of M event, Wanda's fractured psyche and unleashed power reshaped the entire Marvel reality, creating an alternate world where mutants ruled and humans were the minority. This wholesale recreation of reality, accomplished with the words "no more mutants," demonstrated power on a scale previously attributed only to cosmic entities like the Infinity Gauntlet or the Beyonder. More shockingly still, when this altered reality collapsed, Wanda's decree remained partially in effect, reducing the global mutant population from millions to fewer than 200 in what became known as the decimation. What places Wanda firmly in the highest tier of Omega classification is not just the scale of this reality manipulation, but its persistence and resistance to cosmic correction. Even entities like the Phoenix Force, which embodies cosmic order and renewal, could not immediately reverse Wanda's alteration to the fundamental nature of mutant existence. Her power had reached levels where it could rewrite not just physical reality but the metaphysical underpinnings of an entire subspecies connection to existence itself. The true nature of Wanda's abilities remains one of the most debated topics in Marvel's metaphysics. Is she primarily a mutant whose probabilistic powers evolved to cosmic scale? Is she primarily a magic user whose mutant abilities provide unique access to chaos forces? Or is she something else entirely, a nexus being whose existence serves as a focal point for reality itself in the multiverse? This fundamental ambiguity about the source and nature of her power makes Wanda one of the most fascinatingly complex Omega-level entities. What makes Wanda's journey particularly compelling is how intimately her power manifestations have been tied to her psychological state and emotional needs. Unlike many cosmic-level beings who wield power with detachment or calculation, Wanda's greatest reality alterations have emerged from her deepest traumas and desires: her longing for family, her grief over loss, her struggle for identity in a world that has often used and manipulated her. In recent years, as Wanda has gained greater stability and conscious control over her abilities, she has demonstrated more precise applications of her reality-altering powers. She can restructure matter at will, create and manipulate energy in its various forms, open portals between dimensions, and perceive possible futures and alternate realities with perfect clarity. Perhaps most significantly, she has shown the ability to rewrite the fundamental magical properties of entire realms, as demonstrated when she temporarily eliminated Death's dominion over a pocket dimension. Through the Scarlet Witch, we witness power born from the intersection of genetic potential, mystical connection, and profound emotional resonance. In Wanda Maximoff, a woman who began with the simple ability to make the unlikely occur and evolved to reshape reality itself, we see the ultimate expression of mutation as transformative force, changing not just the individual who carries the gene, but potentially the very nature of existence for all who share it. We return now to a figure we encountered earlier in our journey, but whose true place in the hierarchy of power deserves this final, most exalted position. David Haller, the mutant known as Legion, stands as perhaps the most fundamentally unlimited Omega-level mutant in Marvel's universe, his fractured psyche housing not just tremendous power, but potentially infinite varieties of power, limited only by the boundaries of imagination itself. We have already explored David's origin, born to Charles Xavier and Gabrielle Haller, traumatized by terrorist attack, his mind fractured into hundreds of distinct personalities, each controlling different aspects of his vast psionic potential. What places him now at the pinnacle of our exploration is the true nature of his power as revealed through decades of stories. Not just tremendous ability, but ability without fundamental limit or classification. According to the most profound understandings of Legion's nature, David doesn't simply possess multiple powers distributed across his fractured consciousness. Rather, his fundamental mutant ability is power manifestation itself, the capacity to develop any ability required by his psyche in response to need or desire. Each of his personalities doesn't merely control a pre-existing power. They generate unique powers specific to their nature and purpose within his mental ecosystem. This understanding elevates Legion beyond even the reality-warping capabilities of Franklin Richards or the Scarlet Witch, where their abilities, though vast, follow certain established patterns and expressions. David's power continuously evolves to generate new and unprecedented abilities as his fractured mind creates new personalities. In essence, Legion doesn't just manipulate reality. He generates new expressions of reality manipulation itself, continuously expanding the boundaries of what mutant abilities can encompass. The most dramatic demonstration of this unlimited potential came during the Age of Apocalypse storyline, when Legion's attempt to change history by killing Magneto accidentally resulted in the death of his own father, Charles Xavier. This single act created an entirely new timeline, a completely alternate reality that existed for years of publication history. Unlike temporary reality alterations created by other powerful beings, Legion's accidental reshaping of history demonstrated power that could permanently alter the fundamental timeline of Marvel's universe. More recently, during the Legion Quest storyline, David demonstrated the ability to create entire pocket dimensions populated with sentient beings, to manipulate time not just by traveling through it but by altering its fundamental flow, and to resurrect the dead by reconstructing their consciousness from psychic impressions left on the fabric of reality. Each of these godlike abilities emerged not as extensions of a single power set, but as entirely new expressions of power manifested through newly emerged personalities within his fractured psyche. What makes Legion uniquely dangerous even among Omega-level mutants is how his power generation interacts with his mental instability. When new traumas or challenges trigger the creation of new personalities within David's mindscape, these personalities develop powers specifically suited to addressing these challenges, effectively meaning that the more threatened or pressured Legion feels, the more varied and potentially dangerous his abilities become. This creates a potentially infinite escalation spiral where attempts to contain or control his power only trigger the manifestation of new powers designed specifically to counter these containment efforts. The true cosmic significance of Legion's existence became apparent during the Legion television series adaptation, which suggested that David might represent an evolutionary leap so profound that conventional reality itself cannot fully contain or classify him. In this interpretation, David isn't merely an Omega-level mutant, but potentially something beyond, a being whose mind creates powers that transcend the established laws of his universe, effectively making him a walking multiverse unto himself. Unlike many powerful mutants who struggle with the moral implications of their abilities, David's challenges are fundamentally ontological questions not of how to use power responsibly, but of what it means to exist as a consciousness so fractured yet so creative that it continuously generates new expressions of reality itself. His journey isn't merely about controlling power, but about integrating a mind that naturally exists across multiple planes of reality simultaneously. In David Haller, we witness perhaps the purest expression of mutant potential, not merely adaptation or evolution toward a specific advantageous trait, but evolution toward unlimited adaptation itself. His mind doesn't simply house tremendous power. It houses the potential for all power, limited only by the boundaries of imagination and need. In this sense, Legion represents not just the pinnacle of mutant development, but its logical conclusion, a being for whom the very concept of limitation has become meaningless.